Welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, where our job is to help you build visibility, professional credibility, and connection with your ideal client by putting the human at the centre of innovative marketing, so you can build and strengthen an engaging, enduring relationship with your ideal clients. I'm Jenyns from InnovaBuzz, and I'm honoured that you're here with me. If you haven't joined our wonderful marketing transformation community yet, go to InnovaBuzz.co and collect your free gift as well. Do subscribe to the show and also leave a review because it helps others find us. Let's get into today's masterclass on this InnovaBuzz podcast.
There is no way you can grow a successful, profitable business that works without the business owner, without systems. Like, systems has to be done. So everybody agrees that they're important. Very rarely are they urgent. So my suggestion and my advice here is make it urgent, move it up the priority, realize that it is the game changer. And then once you systemize your business and you can deliver consistent value, your life will change, your world will change, your business will change. So just start the process.
Welcome back. I hope you've had an awesome week so far. If you haven't yet listened to my recent conversations with Book, Speak, Repeat founder Kerry Heaps, and with the founder of Splashio, Gideon Shelwick, then do check them out, but only after you've listened to today's conversation. I'm really excited today to have on the InnovaBuzz podcast as my guest, David Jenyns. He's the author of the new book, Systemology. Dave's entrepreneurial journey began in his early 20s when he sold Australia's most beloved sporting venue, the Melbourne Cricket Ground. And my Australian listeners will know how hallowed that turf is. Since then, his business experience has spanned from franchising retail clothing stores to founding one of Australia's most trusted digital agencies, Melbourne SEO Services. In 2016, he successfully systemised himself out of that business, hired a CEO, and stepped back from the daily operations. And through that process, he became a systems devotee, founding SYSTEMology. Today, his mission is to free all business owners worldwide from the daily operations of running their business. He spends most of his time supporting the growing community of certified systemologists as they help business owners implement systemology. He also hosts his own popular podcast, Business Processes Simplified. In our discussion today, Dave talked to me about systems as a framework for your business to free up your time and free up bandwidth to add value to your business in more productive ways. We talked about how creatives and innovators can build systems that benefit their creativity. And we talked about how to extract yourself from the day-to-day operations of your business to allow working on new projects, new opportunities, or extended vacations. Without further ado then, let's fly into the hive and get the buzz from Dave Jenyns. Hi, I'm your host Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBuzz, and I'm excited to welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast today from across the Port Phillip Bay from where I am on the Mornington Peninsula. He is David Jenyns, the founder of System Hub and Systemology. He's the host of the Business Process Simplified podcast. He's the author of the new forthcoming book, Systemology, proven small business systems that reduce headaches, save time, and create scalable profits. So welcome to the InnovaBuzz podcast, Dave. It's a real privilege to have you back as a guest.
Hey, Jürgen, it's a pleasure to be back. It feels like such a long time since we chatted, so looking forward to the call.
Yes, it was. Now, I checked back when you did appear, and last time was on episode 41 to talk about your book on authority content, but you've also appeared on, in the early days, on episode 27, and then with Troy Dean on episode 36. So I think I believe you are the founding member of the exclusive Four-Timer Club of the InnovaBuzz podcast. So first of all, thank you for your contribution to my show and to my audience. I really appreciate that. I really appreciate your support, and congratulations on founding this new Four-Timer Club.
Oh, thank you. That's a little bit of a privilege. I didn't even realize. So I accept my award graciously and say thank you. And I'm sure this one will be our best episode yet.
Yeah. All right. Well, the other thing I wanted to thank you for, and not many people know this story from the podcast listeners, and that's that you're the reason that I was able to get Michael E. Gerber on my show. And we had Michael on episode 54, if memory serves me correctly. And that was a fabulous episode. And of course, in those days, with only just over 50 episodes under my belt, to get a luminary, a leader in the field of business in general, like Michael Gerber, was just such a privilege and a boost to me. And he was such a generous contributor, and we had a wonderful conversation. So thanks for that introduction too.
Pleasure. Yeah, Michael's a mentor of mine, and to this day, we still work on some different projects. I feel really lucky and privileged to be in that position because he's had a tremendous impact on small business, and particularly in the space of small business systems. And I really, it was great to actually hear that episode myself as well, because you always approach things a little bit differently from me, but you still have the systems mind. So it's great to hear the different things that you were able to pull out. So if you haven't listened to that episode, I definitely suggest someone, after they listen to this episode,
Yes.
of course, go back and take a listen to that episode.
That's right. Okay. Now, what I was going to ask, because I think there's lots of interesting things about your background that I'm sure will fascinate the listener. But you talk a lot about your background and how you came to systems thinking and your journey in the book. So I don't want to preempt that, and I'm sure there's lots of interviews that you've done where you talk about that. I wanted to kind of take a slightly different tack here, and so you and I are both kind of system geeks, and we get really excited about systems and what they can do for business. What is it, in your opinion, that drives your excitement and passions about systems? I mean, I remember the time when you got I think it was the domain name Systemology, or maybe it was the business name. It was one of those two, and you posted about it in the social media, and you could sense your excitement about that. So what is it that drives that passion and excitement?
Yeah. For me, it's not so much the enjoyment I get from writing detailed systems and processes. It really is the result that systems brings to the business owner. And I think a lot of people miss that, thinking, oh, I'm a startup business owner. They might be the visionary who sees the problem in the world. They create the product or service to solve that problem. They're hustlers, they're quick movers, they kind of do what needs to be done. And oftentimes they are the furthest from systems thinking than you can be. And oftentimes they need their opposite, someone who's quite detail orientated, process driven, to handle that side of the business. So for me, I am a visionary leader. So I see those problems and I'm a big picture thinker. So for me to get excited about systems, I focus in on the result that they give. And for me, the result is all about creating space, because most business owners are just too busy in the day-to-day operations that even if the best opportunity in the world fell in their lap or walked past them, they probably wouldn't even notice it, or they might not be able to take advantage of it because they're just too busy. They can't step away from the business for more than a day or two. And those are the opportunities, though, that really move the needle the most and create the biggest wins and allows a business owner to level up incredibly quickly. So I see systems as a way to create space, and that space allows the business owner to see opportunities and, more importantly, also take advantage of them.
Yeah, I love that. And I think, time is kind of the most precious resource. It's the only resource we have that's non-renewable. And for me, it's a lot of it. I mean, I'm with you in the sense that I like doing a checklist, but then getting down to the next level of detail, I get bored very quickly. So I like the high level stuff. But I do the checklist because if I'm doing something and then I come back in a week's time or a month's time and have to do the same thing and find myself now, how did I do that again? Where was that information that have to follow the structure? Where's the password that I need for that? Or how what were the steps I need to do? What do I need to remember and not forget? Otherwise, it'll break. Those things really frustrate me. If the second time I do it, I'm asking the same questions as I did the first time when I didn't know what I was doing. So that's where, for me, the result is if I've documented it in some form or a list, I refer to that, and it just saves so much time.
I love that, because where the business owner does their best work is in problem solving mode.
Mm.
So if you're solving the same problem though over and over and over and over and over again, that's a really poor use of that skill and that talent. Really, you want to solve a problem once, figure out the process, the checklist, the system, and then move on to the next biggest problem. So next time that task comes around, or if you delegate it, you just follow the process where you've previously solved that problem that
Mm.
got the desired outcome and the desired result, and now you're able to do it consistently. I remember I did a talk. It was a TEDx talk for TEDx youth in the Netherlands, and I talked about creating a checklist effectively for when you go traveling, because I was speaking to some youth, so wasn't talking in terms of business, but I wanted to bring this idea of systems thinking. And I said to them, how do most people pack when they go on holiday? They think, oh, what do I need next? I need my toothbrush, I need some shorts, I need a t-shirt, what else do I need, what else do I need? Like, that's their system for just thinking, what else do I need? But invariably what happens by using that approach, you get to the airport and in the back of your head you're
Yeah,
still
yeah.
thinking, oh, what do I need? Then you
And
realize that you
inevitably you forget something.
forgot your charger or whatever it is, and then you feel bad about it. Whereas if you had a checklist and you'd pre-thought, well, here's what I like to pack when I go traveling, and you only think about that once, next time you follow the checklist, and by the time you get to the airport, instead of thinking, oh, did I remember everything, you can be thinking more about in the moment of what you're going to be enjoying on the holiday
Mm.
and enjoying that experience, rather than being caught up in your head thinking about what did you forget to pack. So it's a very simple example of what a checklist or a good system can do.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I think that's a great example because I've got about a dozen checklists for travel, and this came about in my very early corporate career. I was traveling a lot internationally, so I needed to take a lot of things related to the business that I was doing on that trip, and I also, of course, wanted to take personal things so that if I was staying over a weekend, for example, I could do my exercise or I could read books or whatever it was that I had. So I had all these different, and the first few trips, of course, I'd get to the other country and, oh, I wish I had this, or damn, I need one of these. So I'd have to go shopping for something. So I developed these lists and, of course, kept adding to them over time. And the lists were country specific or trip specific or length of trip specific, in terms of, some of the things that I would take on one particular trip, but not on another one. And I've got all these. And there's a funny story because we've been doing quite a bit of traveling as a couple, my wife and I, and visiting my son over in San Francisco and visiting relatives in Germany. So, she's asked me, "Oh, can you give me your trip list?" So before I start packing, so she's asked me for that, and also I've gone on some trips with JV partners, and they've also learned about my trip list, and they say, "Oh, can you send me your trip list? I'm about to pack."
Love it, love it. And I think as a nation, like thinking the German people, you have it programmed in, like they are very process systems driven people, and that's why everybody talks about things like German engineering. It's done very well because they think in terms of process. So I think you're lucky it came baked in.
Yeah, yeah, in some ways. All right. Now you mentioned, recognizing opportunities and then actually having the bandwidth to, first of all, recognize the opportunities and then take advantage of opportunities that might be a once in a lifetime. And you've got a wonderful story on that. So I know you talk about it in the book, but I'd love you to share it here because I think that really hammers home that point.
Yeah, and it dovetails into that episode we were talking about earlier with Michael Gerber. So the way that I actually got to know Michael was through a series of serendipitous events that just led him to my door, and I had the space to take advantage of those. So I'd done my first book launch, which makes me feel like, Jürgen, you've come along this whole journey because you were there helping with the book launch. My first book was a book called Authority Content. I launched that, and it was a really great success. And somehow Luz Delia Gerber, Michael Gerber's wife, had spotted that book launch. She saw a bit of content online. She watched a video. She signed up to my newsletter, started consuming some of the content, and really enjoyed what we did for the book launch. She said, "This is fantastic." And then Michael was just turning 80 at the time, had written the final book in his E-Myth series called Beyond the E-Myth. And for the first time, they had decided that they wanted to self-publish. All of the previous books were done through HarperCollins, and this one they wanted to self-publish. So Lucelia had that in the back of her head. Then she happened to come across my work, and she said, "This is awesome. I'm going to get David to do Michael's book launch." So she just sent me an email completely out of the blue. I had no relationship with her. I did not know her name. I knew the surname. When it came through saying Luzdelia Gerber, I knew Gerber, the certain Michael E. Gerber and his book, The E-Myth. But Luzdelia I wasn't familiar with. And all the email said was, "Call me." And then it was her phone number. So I called. It was about 7 a.m. in the morning in Australia, and I knew they were based on the West Coast, so it was going to be in their afternoon. So I gave them a call, and she told me the story, and then basically concluded with, "Would you like to launch Michael's book? The only catch is it's going to take 3 months of incredibly hard work, long hours, early mornings, late nights, weekends. You're going to eat, breathe, and sleep the E-Myth as we move into the launch." And I said, "I would love to do it. Not only that, I'd like to volunteer for the position. I just like the opportunity to work with Michael and be mentored under Michael." So I went on that magical carpet ride and worked on that project. And that's obviously as part of the book launch. You also got to have Michael on the show as part of that. And then towards the end of that, they invited me over to attend a thing called the Dreaming Room, which is one of the last events Michael was running in Carlsbad, California. And I had a couple of friends that had helped me with the book launch. So we rented one of these amazing houses in Carlsbad, California, one that was basically hanging off the side of a rock overlooking the ocean. And we attended the workshop for the week. And then at the end of that, they asked me to stay on. They were doing a private mastermind where they invited the who's who of business to talk about the future legacy of Michael's work and what was going to happen. And they wanted to have Tony Robbins facilitate the group, but it didn't quite end up lining up. And at the 11th hour, they didn't have a facilitator. So I stuck up my hand and I said, "Well, I'll facilitate the group." And then she thought for a moment. She said, "Okay, well, why not?" So then I got to facilitate the group. Now, I remember as I'm doing that, I couldn't, it almost felt like a dream. I couldn't believe where I was standing, particularly not 4 months earlier. I had no connection or discussion with the Gerbers at all. Like, it was just a series of these random events that had led me to that moment. And I was in a position where I could take that opportunity and follow that opportunity because I had systemized my digital agency. I'd hired a CEO. About a year prior to that, we found out we were pregnant, and I made some significant changes to the business where I focused heavily on systemization and removing me. And then Melissa, my CEO, she basically took the reins. It was a perfect opportunity for her to really take the reins with that business. And I just went and worked on this project for 3 months. And that really was the like solidification in my brain of the importance of systems, because now, like, business is a little bit like a game of snakes and ladders. You continue working up the board and you take the different step. Occasionally you will land on a ladder, but you have to be ready and able to walk up that ladder. And I walked up that ladder with Gerber, and I feel like I jumped probably about 50 or 60 spaces, and he's been able to connect with me. I like connect loads of people with me and do tons of introductions. He wrote the foreword to my new book, Systemology. He called the book extraordinary, and all of that happened as a result of systems, and a big part of his work and that influence on me as well.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing story. And, if you reflect on that and you think, gee, there's just one email that comes in from somebody whose name you didn't recognize except for the Gerber part. And I guess, did you think first, is this a spam thing or a practical joke that somebody's playing on me?
I I'm trying to think of what I thought. I almost just I was in reaction mode. The email came through, and then it said call me, so it was like a direct instruction.
Mm.
So I didn't even really give much of a second thought. I just thought, oh, let's follow this rabbit hole. I've had a few situations in my life that have shown me following those sorts of rabbit holes usually leads to big opportunities. I think in one of the earlier episodes we talked about me selling the MCG. That was another one. It was just one of those opportunities, right place, right time, saw it and thought, I'm sure I wasn't the only person who thought it. A good friend of mine, Pete Williams, or he became a good friend, had also thought of that. And I'm sure there would be other people that have thought of it that didn't take any action either. And I remember getting involved with a life-size Lego car that was powered by air. It was an out of the blue opportunity. A friend of mine said, "Send me $500 and I'll tell you about this cool project I'm working on." And he found a Romanian who built this life-size Lego car powered by air, and we shipped him over to Australia and got a huge amount of media coverage. But it's all these little things that you can't really plan for. You just have to learn. You do learn how to spot them, and then you do learn which ones are really worth pursuing. But most things I will just lean into just to see what happens, because you never know what's on the other side.
Yeah. And of course, systems allow you the bandwidth to explore those things in some more detail, right? So tell us then a little bit about the whole philosophy behind systemology and the new book.
Yes, yes. So the new book, Systemology, and I reworked the subtitle since I last sent it to you. So it's create time, reduce errors, and scale profits with proven business systems. And the whole idea, when you think of the E-Myth does a great job at selling the reason why systems are important. It does a great job at explaining what Michael calls the entrepreneurial myth, this myth that just because you can do the thing means that you can run a business that delivers the thing. For example, just because you cut the lawns doesn't mean that you can run a gardening business. There are a lot of other skills involved. So Michael's book really paints that case well. And then a lot of books came after that, again, all talk to the importance of business systems, things like scaling up and traction, and built to sell. There are these books that all talk to the topic, but I feel the area that was most under addressed is, but how do I do it? Where do I get started? What is the first system? If I am a visionary who isn't a system or a process thinking person, where do I get started? How do I make this easy? How can I make sure my team buys into it? How can I make sure that we don't systemize out the creativity? That's one of the things I love about the InnovaBuzz podcast. The whole idea, even though you're a systems thinker, it's about innovation. And for some reason, some people think that those are mutually exclusive terms, and you systemize innovation out of things, for a lot of people. But that's actually not the case. You systemize things to a point where what has to happen happens, and happens to a good standard, so much so that you free up brain space that you can then now think about the more important things. So Systemology, it's the system for systemizing business. It's a 7-step process designed to take the business that has zero or very low systems and is very person dependent to something that has runs a bit more smoothly, like a Swiss watch, that has clear systems and processes and helps to create accountability within the team. So it's the system for systemizing business, I suppose, is the short answer.
Yeah, I love that. And one of the things that you taught me was in terms of writing the process, because I like what you said there about, that conflict between innovation and creativity and systemizing things and building processes around stuff. And I remember in my corporate life way back when, we built this system from start to finish of a product development, and we involving research and involving our customers right at the beginning to get their input, and had it all processed out to the end. And one of the big things that were kind of barriers or hurdles that we had to overcome at the beginning were the people that were in the fundamental research who said, "Oh no, we're creative thinkers, we're innovators. This will restrict what we do." And we said, "Well, actually, it won't, because what we're doing is building a process for getting the customer inputs, and that's actually the source of your innovation. Because if you're just doing something in a vacuum that at the end of it the customer says, no, that's not what I want, that's kind of a waste of time, and you've spent a lot of time to get to that point. Whereas here we're going to basically remove all that time because we're involving them at the beginning, and then we've got all these ways to make sure that we capture all the knowledge and we share the knowledge with people who can then contribute back in and grow that knowledge and collaborate and so on. So that was certainly one of the big barriers. One of the things I learned from you, though, in doing that was, well, actually, there's two things that I took away from probably one of our very early discussions, and that was the idea that you don't write the process to the point where it is very rigid. It's more like a framework for doing something, and the business owner then doesn't write the process themselves. So your
Yes.
suggestion, and I do that all the time now, is when I'm doing something first, and once I'm confident this is the right way to do it, this is a good way to do it, I'll record a video and a screencast of me doing it, give that to somebody else who ultimately will be the person doing that task as part of their job. And they actually write the process from that original video, and they might modify. I encourage them, in fact, to modify it. I say, hey, if you prefer to do this in a different way, as long as we get this result and this quality, then you write the process.
Yes, yeah. I learned that insight from this guy called Reed Hastings, who runs a small company known as Netflix. And he made a comment when they went down the business systemization path. He said, we started this journey and we wanted to make sure that the business was dummy proof. So we systemized everything down to the minute detail. But he said, then what we found out, unfortunately, the only people who wanted to work here were dummies, because he had completely over-engineered things. So I think there is a sweet spot. We don't want to create too much red tape. We want to create enough of a framework and guide rails and still create space for creativity. I think oftentimes a lot of this misconception comes from thinking about systemizing like McDonald's. Everybody sees McDonald's as the poster child of business systemization. And what they try and do is they're running a hamburger stand. So effectively, they want to get 15-year-olds in there who don't know anything, train them up very quickly on how to make a hamburger. And that's okay if you're running a hamburger stand, but for a professional services type business, you want to be hiring smart people and giving them the space to think and be intelligent. And that's why you pay to get great people. So I feel you don't want to be telling them how to suck eggs or making it painstaking for them on how to follow a system or process. You want to empower them. So that's where you have to find that right balance with your systems and processes, not over documenting, getting enough so that your business has a way of doing things and things are clear and certain steps are done to a certain standard. But let's say from a web design perspective, you still need to have enough space to do the creative bit. But yes, getting them to fill out a questionnaire up front, making sure you've got all the right login details and their logos, and making sure that the project is briefed in correctly and you're setting the expectations for clients. All of that should be happening in a systematic way. So that way, when whoever's sitting down to do the creative work, they've got everything that they need to be creative. And they don't need to think about, I should have chased up that logo, or I don't have the style guide from the client. And now that gets in the way of creativity. So that's the way that I like to think of it. But yeah, that's a a big one, removing the business owner and then keeping it very simple. And think about the 80-20. Go for the 20% of the systems that make 80% of the result rather than trying to systemize everything.
Yeah, well, I think that's an important point in the book, isn't it? And, because I was going to ask if a business owner says, and even I, from time to time, look at our systems and I say, oh gosh, we've got to really do an audit here and check some of these things and make sure they're really up to scratch. And here's one that was written by a person that no longer works for us, and we haven't run it for a while. So what if we had to use that again? Is it up to scratch? And it can be very overwhelming, even that. And so I imagine if you're sort of setting out and you haven't got anything documented, it would be totally overwhelming. So what's your starting approach there in terms of saying, okay, well, let's apply that 80-20 rule and
yeah, and so someone can follow along the exercise really easily. We talk about it in the book. The first stage in systemology is the define stage. If someone wanted to do it right now, they'd just get out an A4 bit of paper. In the top left-hand corner, they'd write down who their dream client is. That's the person who pays their advertised prices, who you enjoy working with. They like your products and services. They come back and they refer. Like, who is that dream client? List that in the top left-hand corner. Then next, think about what is the perfect product or service that would be a great place for that client to start to get to know you. So if you'd never worked with that dream client before and they were going to start working with you, what's the first thing that you might sell them to introduce them to your world and some of the other services that you can provide? So once you got those two worked out, then we move into the process we call the critical client flow. It's a little bit like a customer journey, except it's not, because it's a bit different, because it also addresses the journey that the business goes through. It's the critical client flow. It's the critical journey that the client and the business goes through to deliver that core product or service. So starting at the top of the page, you think, how do people become aware of your business? And this is just a series of boxes, and in each box, you're not going to write more than 2 or 3 words. It really is about simplification and getting a high level understanding of the core steps in this process, and also focus on things that you're doing, not things that you would like to be doing. So let's say you had a business, and the way that you get attention could be you run some SEO, maybe you do some Facebook ads, maybe you speak on podcasts, maybe you run newspaper ads, whatever it is. Think about however you generate leads and list that in the boxes at the top of the page. Then moving down, the next rung down is, how do you respond to an inquiry that comes into your business? Is that, you probably get an email, or maybe you get a phone call, or maybe you get someone filling out a web form. That would be the next rung down. Underneath that, you think about, what does your sales process look like at that point? Like, once the lead comes in, and you might have a few steps here, you might say, well, I start off with some qualification, and then we book in a discovery call on Zoom. And then after the Zoom call, I issue out a proposal, and then I follow up. So again, all you're doing is moving down the page. Each one of these steps appears in a box, and you're just working down the page. Then the next question is, after you've sent out the proposal and they're ready to go, what is that next stage from the money point of view? Do you take payment up front? Do you do 50% up front and 50% on completion? Or how does that work? Then the next stage down under that is, how do you onboard the client? Do you have questionnaires that you fill out? Do you add them into a project management platform? What does that look like? The next step down underneath that is then, how do you deliver the product or service? Now, this is usually the most complex, but again, we're just keeping very high level at the moment. So you would just go right the delivery. And then finally, underneath that, you think about getting the client to, like, we call this one handover or repeat, or potentially both. You're giving the client the product, and you're trying to get them to come back or maybe refer business. So doing that on an A4 bit of paper, very high level, just focusing in on what it is that you're doing. What that does is, if that's a great way to focus on what is the 20% of the systems. If you could systemize the critical client flow, that means you can deliver a product or service without any key person dependency, which means the business can make money without the business owner. And when you get to that situation, you create a scalable money machine. So I always suggest to focus there. And if you've got particular problems inside your business, then you can narrow in on your critical client flow where those problem areas are. So you might say, well, I don't have any leads. Well, let's have a look at your lead generation systems first. You might say, I have a problem with selling people. I get enough leads, but I'm just not converting. Well, let's have a look at your sales system. Or you might say, I have problem clients and I always need to explain to them that, I'm going to call you back or I'll give you updates on this day because they're on the phone always and they're chasing me up. So you got frustrating clients. Well, that means you've probably got a poor onboarding system. So all problems can always be related back to the system level. And I know I'm preaching to the converted here for you, Jürgen, but the person listening to this, if you've got some problems in the business, it is systems related. You have to become aware of them first, then figure out what it is that you're doing, at least get a consistent approach, and then you can be more strategic in improving it once you're aware of what's going on.
Yeah, well, when I read about the critical client flow in the book, and we've had lots of conversations on process, but I read about the critical client flow, and it was almost like another light went off for me because I thought, well, this is, you mentioned it's like a customer journey, but not the customer journey. I mean, my thought was this is the customer journey at a tactical level, from the point of view of what does the business need to do to, and I'll use my terminology now, the transformational marketing, take them from their before state where they've got a problem that you are in a position to solve to their after state where that problem's solved. And in my world, it's also about they're now raving fans of you. So they're actually part of your marketing team because they're out talking about you. And maybe
it feeds up to the top.
Exactly. Yep. It's sort of circular. It feeds up to the top and maybe they say, well, what, I want your help in doing something else because I see you do this too. So, to me, that's kind of the marketing journey. And I thought, well, the critical client flow is really the tactical aspects of that within the business and how you then use all those systems to interact with a customer.
100%. And it really speaks to one of the huge myths in business systemization, which is you're not going to need to create hundreds of systems to have a meaningful impact and create a systemized business. But if you systemize the critical client flow, I'm telling you now, your business will change. For the person who doesn't have systems in place, just getting the critical client flow, that will get you and your team fully all bought into the idea of business systemization because it's a game changer. So that's one of the reasons for using it is just to get you to focus. It's how do we find that 20%? And there are a truckload of other systems. Later on, we can think about them, things like hiring staff and onboarding staff and your management systems and your finance systems, issuing out, your P&Ls at the end of the month or doing payroll. Like all of that is systems. That comes later. That's actually stage number 6 in the systemology process. But first, we got to get the critical client flow down.
Yeah, and the other thing I like about the critical client flow, you mentioned this, is if you map it out at that high level and you then say, well, the biggest challenge in my business is whatever, let's say getting leads, well then, you can identify pretty clearly, well, here's the system that's responsible for getting more leads. So let's explore that some more. What's missing there or what's broken there that is responsible for the issue of not getting enough leads?
People definitely get an aha moment, especially if you're not systems thinking or sometimes people build their businesses. It's almost like a Frankenstein business. They build it over time. They build it as it's needed. They bolt things on when they've got a problem, as opposed to thinking, what is the structure here? And it's different. The older you get, and if you've been involved in more than one business, once you're at your third or your fourth business, you start to think about these things up front, and then you start to build the business with the right framework from the get-go. But a lot of business owners, when they just get started, it's all cobbled together. So when you go through the process, you actually spot where the holes are And you get an aha moment because it becomes immediately obvious why you're having certain pain points. Of course, you struggle with leads because you don't have any lead generation systems. Like, it's obvious.
Mm.
So it's going through the exercise, you find where it's patchy, and that then again just gives you that blinding flash of the obvious of, oh, okay, well, I need to fill in this blank now.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's a really good way to do it. And you mentioned, the Frankenstein analogy of cobbling on. I think your whole philosophy around systems, and I really subscribe to that as well, is building the framework. And to me, to kind of take that analogy in a slightly different direction and use your Lego car example from earlier, to me, building the framework allows you to have the Lego approach, which says, okay, I don't need to build the whole lot at once. I can add some stuff on later as kind of a Lego building blocks, but the framework is such that, that's still going to make sense. So now we need to add something over here. That's just a Lego brick that goes on this part, but the framework's there, the Lego brick fits in here, and it's still a great business.
I think one thing that I recognize, what makes a good business system or framework is something that can be applied in a variety of different scenarios. I'm not a huge fan of systems and processes that are so optimized for one set of circumstances that if the circumstances aren't an exact match, the system doesn't work.
Mm.
Oftentimes people over optimize things to the point where now they start to break down in reality because things aren't always exactly ideal conditions. So you need to have your systems and processes. A good framework is something that can be applied in many different scenarios and still get a great result. So when I think about those Lego pieces, and I mean, that's a great example with Lego. Like, if I've got some Lego pieces and then Jurgen's got some Lego pieces, I can go around to Jurgen's house, take my Lego, and it's going to work with Jurgen because it's built off the same framework and it's a system that's consistent. And similarly, you want to think of your terms of your business that way as well. You need to get that framework so that when you start adding pieces on, it's all under the same structure. And you're not trying to use Mobilo and trying to connect it to Lego and then finding that they're incompatible. So I quite like that analogy.
Yeah, yeah. And actually, it's just triggered a thought, which is, here's a little hack for everybody, little suggestion. You don't need to build all the systems yourself. So if you imagine, your profit and loss reporting, that's the same pretty much for every business. Now, sure, it's different in different countries because of the legal requirements and taxation laws and whatnot, but the principles are the same. Now, with the internet today, somebody would have written that process somewhere. And I suggest to you that
Yeah.
there's probably thousands or hundreds of thousands of people that have written their own process somewhere. And many of those have actually shared them. And one of the things that your system hub system does, and I know a lot of other systems do this as well. So here's a little hack. If you need a system for something that is generic in that kind of sense, go and look on the internet, go and look at some of these systems platforms, because there probably are templates there that you can use. And I've learned that from
And
your System Hub system. I thought, wow,
yeah,
well, there's one that I don't have. I'll just take that one and fine tune it for my purposes.
Yeah, and we had you, Jurgen, share one of your systems. We run an event called the Business Systems Summit, and we get a range of guests on. We tell them, okay, what's a problem that you solve inside your business, and walk through it step by step how you do your thing. So we had 50 guests. You were one of them who shared a system and a process. We then watched that recording and then had it documented afterwards. You actually already had yours documented, but most of the guests, we actually had to do the documentation. That's actually what my podcast is about. So it's a bit different from yours. We don't go into story so much, and it's not as much about getting to know the guest as it is just share the system or the process. So business processes simplified. That's what I do, because you're right. The problems in business are solved. It's a matter of finding who's solved that problem, find out how they do it step by step, and then use that as your starting point. Obviously, you might need to customize it a little bit to your situation, but that will definitely get you a lot further along the process.
Hmm. All right. So what else should we know about the book Systemology before? I mean, it's coming out on August 19th, right?
The 18th.
18th.
So, yeah, August 18th, just around the corner. Depending on when you're listening to this, you'll be able to head to systemology.com/book and it'll link through to Amazon. The plan is to get on Audible, although I believe there's a little bit of a delay there. So it should be on Apple Books and a few of the other platforms in audio. And then that link also, systemology.com/book, will link through to the podcast and all the rest of it, those sorts of things. But I think the main thing to take away when I wrote the book, and it's similar to my first book, Authority Content, I wanted to make sure that the book was complete. So the book gives you everything that you need. It is the complete system. It's the way that I systemize business. And for someone who is motivated, who sees the need for systems, and I know you already resonate with that because you're listening to the InnovaBuzz podcast. So you are a systems thinker. And if you're still struggling and you haven't quite got there, then and you need a system on where to get started, that's really what Systemology is all about. It's to give you that step by step.
Great. All right. Well, so tell us that website again, and also where people can find out more about you personally, and maybe even reach out and say thanks for what you've shared today.
Yeah, definitely. So it's systemology.com/book. On there, down in the footer, you'll find the social media links, the links to the podcast. There's a bio page on that. So pretty much everything you'll be able to find from that location. More than happy to answer any questions, geek out on some systems and processes, or if you're just getting started and you got a question, more than happy to help. There's a lot of free info on the website. I know you're well placed by listening to Jürgen's podcast, so your brain's already in the right place when it comes to systems. That's really my patch of turf, I suppose, for lack of a better word. I've decided to get really good at that first step in getting business systems down. So I'd love to help you in the journey if you need it, or at the very least, I'll point you in the right direction.
All right, great. Now, it would be remiss of me not to do the buzz round, even though you've done it before, but I thought, well, let's do it again and see how your thinking's evolved in the time since you've been on last. So just as a reminder, it's our 5 questions, which forms our innovation round, designed to help our listeners who are primarily innovators and leaders in their field with some tips from your experience. So we've got 5 questions, as I said, and hopefully you'll give us some tips that'll inspire the listener to go and do something awesome today as a result.
Perfect. Let's do it.
So what's the number one thing anyone needs to do to be more innovative?
Create space. Creating space for innovation is critical.
Somehow I knew you were going to say that. So yeah, and that's really comes back to what we were talking about earlier in time. That time once this time is gone, you can't get it back. So anywhere you can create space and time, that's
Yeah, and because you don't know when the innovation is going to occur, and that's why people often say their best ideas happen when they're in the shower. It's because there's no distractions, they're in the moment, and it gives their brain the space and the time to think. You as a business owner need to engineer that space and do more of it, because that's where your best ideas will come from.
Great. I love it. Okay. Now, what's the best thing you've done to develop new ideas?
Best thing I've done, beyond just creating the space, I think, is collaboration. And once I create that space, then working with as many smart people as I can and learning and modeling what I know is working. I suppose that goes back to a little bit about what we talked about before. A lot of the problems in business have already been solved. Find the person who's already solved it. Shortcut your learning by modeling their approach. And then once you get the basics, then you customize it and make it your own. So you take complete ownership of the result. But that's a great way to really speed up the process.
Yeah, I love it. The collaboration and building the networks which can lead to those opportunities like you mentioned before, where you can then climb up a ladder. And if you have the space to do it,
right.
yeah. Yeah, one of my guests recently said something, and I thought, wow, that's really profound. And it was, I just got to think for a moment to get it right. It was the keys to the door you need to go through are in somebody else's pocket.
Brilliant. I love
Yeah.
that. Yes. Yeah.
Hmm.
That, I think that's quite an empowering thought as well, and encourages the right behavior.
Yeah. All right. Now, favorite resource.
Favorite resource would be biased, I would say System Hub, but really, I think if I think about everything and what I consume the most, really YouTube these days.
Mm.
I can just find any answer to any question I've got on YouTube. There's really nothing better. It is an amazing tool.
Mm. Yeah, I find I'm going onto YouTube quite a bit, particularly when I'm faced with having to repair something around the home or
Ye
something on my bicycle. So listeners will know I'm a keen cyclist. So if I need to do an adjustment on the bicycle, which can be quite complex, but and again, this is a system. I go on YouTube and have a look, and there's somebody that has a video. Here's how you do this, and so that saves a hell of a lot of time. And I can, and of course, I get the um, adrenaline rush or ego boost, I guess, if I succeed in actually reproducing the result that the person's got.
Yes, yes. I'm, definitely a weekend tinkerer on YouTube, that's for
Yeah.
sure.
Well, the other thing that raises, of course, is there's a huge opportunity there for people to actually get their message out some more onto YouTube. It's probably still quite underutilized, even though it's the second biggest search engine on the internet.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of YouTube, and that goes back to my first book, Authority
Mm.
Content. I've been sort of speaking to the idea of video content and sharing it into micro-sized pieces and sharing it around. I feel like it's a great way to just get started in business. It gives you a chance to perfect your craft, get good at delivering your message, and seeing what resonates and connects with your audience.
Mm. Great. Okay. Now, what's the best way to keep a project or a client on track?
For me, I still use, may have been what we had used last time, Asana. That's my biggest one. I like, as far as monitoring and managing the clients, and then having either a project manager or someone clearly communicate the different stages. I find most of the times with clients, if they go off track, 9 times out of 10, it's because of miscommunication, or that could have been solved by saying something up front, preparing them so everybody was on the same page.
Mm. Yeah, I love it. The communication part is really important, isn't it? And whilst a good project management system helps you structure it and gives you a bit of a process because it gives you the framework. The communication is really key. And again, coming back to our conversation, having good systems in place frees up the time to have those in-person communications that you know sets expectations, clarifies issues, and keeps things moving forward.
Yes, yeah.
All right, now the number one thing anyone needs to do to differentiate themselves.
I think the main thing is if you can deliver consistency, which comes from systems and processes, then that is a huge differentiator. A lot of businesses are haphazard at best, and it depends on which team member you're working on, which will determine what sort of results you get. And some projects will be run differently. When we think about some of the great systemized businesses, even like Disney always resets their rides before someone goes through it. They reset the experience. So when someone goes through, they have the wow experience all the way through. So think in terms of your critical client flow and the experience that's giving to customers, and make it consistent and wow them through that approach. If you do that, a lot of businesses, that's one of the best ways to stand out. McDonald's isn't one of the most successful small businesses of all time because it makes a great hamburger. It's successful because it delivers a hamburger or result consistently. It doesn't have to be the best.
Mm.
People will pay for the consistency, and that's probably the real key of business.
Yeah, and you know what to expect, right? You go into a McDonald's in where you are, or where I am on the other side of the bay, or on the other side of the world in San Francisco where my son is. If you go into a McDonald's, that's what you're going to get with a Big Mac.
100%,
Yeah.
100%. So,
Whether you think that's good or bad, that's another question, but you certainly get consistency.
that's right. And you can't deny that they haven't been successful from doing
That's right, yeah. All right. Now, do you have any parting advice you'd like to leave our listener today?
So biggest suggestion is just to get started on the systemization journey. Every business owner at some point to grow needs to cross this bridge. There is no way you can grow a successful, profitable business that works without the business owner, without systems. Like, systems has to be done. So everybody agrees that they're important. Very rarely are they urgent. So my suggestion and my advice here is make it urgent, move it up the priority, realize that it is the game changer. And then once you systemize your business and you can deliver consistent value, your life will change, your world will change, your business will change. So just start the process.
Yeah, that's such great advice. And certainly your story about your, how you met Michael E. Gerber and Luz Delia, and how you got involved in the launch of the Beyond the E-Myth. That's, that they're the sort of opportunities that you can take advantage of when they cross your path if you've got systems in place. I remember, and this is going back, probably my business was maybe 4 years old at the time, and my son was in Europe, and he announced that he was getting married. And I said to my family here, I said, well, we're going over to the wedding. There's no questions about that. And while we travel to the other side of the world, to Europe from Australia, we'll take some holiday. I haven't had a good holiday for a while, neither have you. So we took 6 weeks off, and I then kind of decided, well, how do I do this with the business? And I'd actually structured it in a way that I was going to do 1 day a week of work, catching up on emails, checking that things were on track and so on. And on the first day when we arrived in Basel, where my son was in Switzerland, my laptop that I'd taken with me, the hard disk crashed and died. Now, there was a bit of a signal there, right? The universe telling me you can have a holiday. And of course, I had no access to my email. I had no access to a computer that was actually working. And I could have scrambled around and gone to places and used a computer in offices or something, but I didn't. And I decided, okay, well, I'll just take that 6 weeks off. And there was probably one little glitch in the business during that 6 weeks, but it was just a little thing that we could sort out on the day. In fact, the team sorted it out. They took some initiative and sorted it out, and I just had to placate the client at the end because he was upset that he couldn't contact me. That was the main thing. But to me, that was, the systems are there, and I can actually just step away from the business, and that's the magic of it. For me, that was a huge, another kind of light bulb moment, really.
Yeah, I often say, if your business is dependent on you, it's broken as the business owner. But it's really for any team member. You want to remove key person dependency. It makes everybody's life and job easier and better and delivers better results. So I think getting yourself out of the process and getting out of the way, realizing that your team can step up and take control if you just give them the space, that's a huge one for a lot of business owners. So I think hopefully hearing it in your story there is enough to spark that fire for someone to say, yeah, I want that too. I'm going to really chase this.
Yep. So get a hold of the Systemology book. By the time this episode goes to air, it will be available at systemology.com, right? Is that the right
/book.
/book, yeah. And certainly it should be it will be on Amazon and hopefully on Audible too, for those people that, like me, like to listen to the audio voice. And you're reading it yourself, right?
Yes, and I even got Michael to read the foreword, and I've got a few special little Easter eggs in the audio version, so it's one to grab for sure.
Okay, well, I look forward to the audio versions. Okay, well, who else should I get on this podcast? Last question.
Yeah. Now that you've had Michael Gerber, I feel like we've started right at the top there. Another great one, authors that I respect their work, I'd be thinking Gino Wickman.
We've had Gino.
And
We've had Gino.
Oh, fantastic. Yes. Okay, well, you're getting all the heavy hitters. Then maybe John Warillo.
We've had John on as well.
Oh,
it was a while since we had John on. Gino was fairly recent.
Yeah. I mean, you've got the who's who, so they're my biggest suggestions.
All right. Well, thanks so much, David, for your time and your insights and sharing your story so generously with us today, and also the why and some examples behind Systemology and why systems can be totally transformative in any business. And I wish you all the best for the book launch, and I'm sure we'll stay in touch.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks again, Jürgen. All the best.
Thanks, Dave. I hope you enjoyed Dave and I geeking out about systems and learned something from Dave's ideas and our conversation. If there's one thing you take away from today, my recommendation would be to explore and investigate the idea of your critical client flow. I'd love to know what you took away from Dave's episode. Leave a comment below the blog post, which you can find at innovabiz.co/systemology. That is SYSTEMOLOGY. All lowercase, all one word, innovabiz.co/systemology. You'll also find contact information for getting in touch with Dave there, as well as links to his personal website, the Systemology website, the Business Processes Simplified podcast, his social media pages, and the other resources we spoke about in today's conversation. Tune in again to the next episodes of the InnovaBuzz podcast, where we've got some more fantastic guests lined up, including Lisa Monette from Badass Beauty TV and Chad Cooper, author of Time Isn't the Problem. Fits really well with the idea of saving time from systems. Bye for now. Thanks for listening to this episode. Make sure you subscribe to the show to be reminded of new episodes. It's free to subscribe. Leave a review if you like. Even if you don't like me, I'm okay with that. I'm asking you to leave a review because it helps other people find this show. Go to innovabiz.co to join our marketing transformation community and access a free gift my team and I made for you. It's the Marketing Master Mini Class. We want to give you everything you need to transform your marketing into a human-centered, relationship-focused growth engine. Until next time, I'm Jürgen Strauss from InnovaBiz. Remember, be awesome and keep innovating.